Hello, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about The Batman. I was not expecting much from this film, and I was just hoping that it was a decent Batman film, that, Robert Pattinson did a good job, that the story would be decent enough that I would be like, okay, it was a worthwhile moment, a worthwhile time. It was a good night. That's all I really wanted out of it, but instead, I got so much more. And to the point where this is what I would consider the best Batman film that I've ever seen, the best DC film that I've probably ever seen, and what I would probably say is a very, very top tier superhero film. I think this is a prime example of what a superhero film can be, and perhaps what they should be. There are a multitude of reasons for this, partially because it's just a good film. The world building, the lighting, the music, the performances by all the actors are just done so well, in my opinion, that this is just such a worthwhile experience. That being said, before we continue, there are going to be spoilers moving forward, so if you have not watched the film, please stop here. So let's start with the legend of the Batman. This also goes hand in hand with the entirety of the intro, I think, and specifically how the Batman is kind of a being to be feared in Gotham, that when the light is shown, when the spotlight is out at night and criminals see it, it strikes fear in them. The entire intro, where it's like Robert Pattinson talking to us about what he's writing in his journal, and all the criminals being afraid of him, his initial fight with that small group of low-level thugs. It's so well done, and it just shows the legend that is the Batman in his early years as a vigilante, how the people of Gotham don't really know if he's real, but there is a sense of fear that is being instilled in the people who misuse their abilities, the people who are corrupt, the people who rob and attack people. And I really, really like that because it adds an element of being a lived in and realistic world, and that is just phenomenal to see. Furthermore, let's talk about the actual world building here, and we have something that I think is very, very cool, and that is a whole slew of villains, right? Initially coming into this movie, I wasn't sure if this was going to be a problem because, well, a lot of the times, too many villains equals a muddled mess. I mean, there have been prime examples of this over the last couple of decades, and just having too many antagonists can really confuse the story. But here, it works really well in that there's a clear overarching villain of the Riddler, and there are some lower level bosses, or even higher level bosses that are controlling the city or have a huge skin in Gotham, but the overarching plot surrounds the murders that are taking place with who the Riddler is going after. And I really appreciated that. I mean, you have Cobblepot, who is working with the current head of the city, who is Falcone, and he's been in charge of the city ever since Dr. Thomas Wayne died way back when. And on top of that, apart from these two, you have Maloney, I believe, or Mulaney, or I think it's Maloney, who was already put away, and since then his drug trade has essentially been taken over by the rest of Gotham, even though it was thought to be having been taken care of at that point. And first off, just those elements alone make this feel like such a lived-in and crazy world with a very clear history, in a sense, because it feels like a world that isn't just, oh, the plot started when the movie started and the plot ends when the movie ends. No, there are years and years of things that took place before the start here, and the impact of not having any strong and good leadership, it's really impacted the city and made it as bad as it is today. Similarly, we have other villains like Catwoman that are involved, although in this film she's not really a villain, even though she is definitely okay with breaking and entering and stealing and all that stuff, but her role is more of a foil in a sense to Batman, in that they're both willing to try to bend the rules to do what is quote-unquote the right thing. And in terms of Selina Kyle, she's just trying to get what she believes is owed to her, and Bruce is trying to help the city and give the people what he thinks that they deserve, which is protection from the villains of this world. And of course, we have the corruption that is taking place within Gotham. I mentioned it earlier briefly, but I mean, that's really who Riddler is going after, and everything from the connections to the Arkhams with Bruce's family, which I didn't actually know about, the impact of the orphanage being shut down, and all of this, it just really feels like a true world that you are walking through. Now, I've kind of touched upon this, but the story itself is that the Riddler starts off by killing, I believe, the mayor of the town, and from there he goes up and kills a couple of other really well-known figures who are all actually very corrupt, and they have all been on the payroll for quite some time, and they're not really trying to help the town or the city of Gotham grow. Moving forward, they are part of the problem. And the Riddler sees it kind of as an act of vengeance, that he should be capable of enacting what he perceives as justice in a sense, and taking out these false heroes. At the same time, we have Bruce, who is just, trying to start out as a vigilante. He's probably been doing this for a couple of years, maybe at most, and I don't know if they actually specify within the film how long he's been around for, but it's still very early years, and we know this by a couple of things. Obviously, Bruce is young. I mean, he's still pretty inexperienced, and then you have Commissioner Gordon, who is not yet the commissioner at the start of the film, and overall, it just seems like Bruce isn't fully aware of the corruption throughout the city that is fully rampant, of all of the ins and outs of the politicians and the lawyers and all these figures that have power that are actually not really doing their jobs, and I really liked that. So it just feels like the story is super believable, apart from maybe the fact that Bruce gets shot a few too many times and is completely fine, even though the impact does start to get to him later on in the film at the very end. But I just feel like, apart from that, the entire story, it feels very believable. The action sequences are very cool, and most of them are very, very just completely ground level. And even the chase scene and stuff like that, they still feel like they're, in a sense, in this particular world where, I mean, it could be our world, right? It's not really something that relies on superhumans or a real suspension of disbelief, because it's just a guy in a bat suit running around fighting against these people, and I really like that. I mean, they even have Bruce jump off of a huge building, I believe it's the police station, and he ends up using one of those flight suits that, I mean, if you look those up, those actually exist, where they're not really flight suits, but they're like gliders. They allow you to glide in the air, and that's actually a thing that exists out there. And then on top of that, he crash lands, and the believability of this story is just on point, and that's kind of what I love. I mean, even the Riddler being a serial killer was not something that I expected, but I think that it was such a cool and interesting twist to, well, what you would initially think of with Edward Nygma, and I really appreciate that. So one of the last things I wanted to mention is Bruce Wayne himself, right? The Batman, Robert Pattinson, I mean, he does a phenomenal job in this role. He is walking around and he just looks broody the entire time. I mean, every time you look at him and he's either alone, or even when he's looking down at Selina or someone else, he's just very hunched over. His head is pointing straight down almost, and you can really tell that this is a troubled and deeply sad person, and this is even bleeding through to when he's Bruce Wayne. I mean, when he's in front of the reporters, when he's just standing in areas without his suit, he looks as though he is depressed and sad and almost emo in a sense, with like his hair and the way that he looks and the lack of facial expressions and stuff like that. I think Robert Pattinson did such a good job because, I mean, such a young Bruce Wayne, the idea that he is capable of masking his entire identity, his persona as Batman, and that he is able to live the playboy type of lifestyle beyond that, it's unlikely, right? Especially with his current age. So I think that that's something that we could potentially see later on down the line, where he starts to build up the persona of his playboy billionaire self while still having those brooding appearances and stuff like that when he's alone, away from cameras, away from prying eyes. That being said, the final thing that I want to talk about is that ending of this film, and that is when Edward Nygma is just in his cell, you know, freaking out a little bit after seeing the TV, and there's someone in the cell next to him, and it seems like it's the Joker. Now, I thought that it was Two-Face for a second because of how screwed up the side of his face looked, but that didn't seem right, and I think I initially also thought it could have been Joaquin Phoenix, but it wasn't his voice. So my understanding right now is that they're going with another actor, and I looked it up briefly, but it does seem like it is potentially the Joker that's supposed to be in this film. So I think that's very cool. That's very cool. I mean, I would have liked to see maybe Joaquin Phoenix and have him potentially be a inmate at Arkham and potentially tie those two worlds together. I mean, that would have been pretty cool, but that being said, I mean, I don't think that was particularly necessary anyway. I don't even really think that I needed the Joker just yet, but I thought it was a cool little Easter egg or tease for what's to come later on, and I really liked it. So yeah, that's really all I have to say for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I really liked this film. I was blown away. I was engaged the entire time. If you liked the video, please like the video, and as always, subscribe for more videos on this channel from me. Comment below if you have any other videos you'd like me to watch in the future, or if you have anything else that you want me to talk about as well. That's all I have to say for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day. Bye.